It's that when false accusations happen, the falsely accused do not have the same recourse as other crime victims. And I say crime victims because this type of false accusation often involves lying to a police officer during an investigation, which is a crime. It often involves filing a false charge, which is a crime. It often involves perjury in a courtroom, which is a crime. And because of things that are written into the Violence Against Women Act in the United States, and similar legislation inspired by the Violence Against Women Act in other countries, the system itself is kept from prosecuting women specifically, not men, but specifically women who commit these types of crimes in the course of a false accusation of domestic violence or a false accusation of sexual violence. Now that's in the court system. And this isn't even on college campuses. Now the Campus Save Act is over and above the Violence Against Women Act. What the Campus Save Act did was separate the rights of the accused one step further from any legal protection that due process offers. So what due process consists of is things like the right to confront your accuser, the right to face your accuser in a court of law, the right to provide exculpatory evidence if there is exculpatory evidence that proves that you didn't do what you're accused of doing, or even casts reasonable doubt on the accusation, the right to testify on your own behalf, things like that. And in a college courtroom, the universities don't provide the accused with those rights. The accused cannot have counsel come in to represent him. The accused does not get to ask the victim questions, or the accuser questions, because the accuser isn't always a victim. And I mean, that was proved very dramatically by the Duke lacrosse team story, and it was proved again very dramatically by the Jackie story, the Rolling Stone. Mm-hmm. And the damage that this does is every bit as severe as, if not more severe, than the damage of being one time sexually assaulted. Because this can wreck a guy's entire life path. You can tell him he can never have the career that he was training for. You go to school for engineering, you're there for 3 years. You rack up $150,000 in debt. Somebody says, I didn't consent to being in your dorm room on Friday night and having sex with you, even though she did. And all of a sudden, you're $150,000 in debt, and this one accusation ends your school career. Not only at that school, but at any other school that accepts federal funding in the United States. You can't be an engineer because she said, I didn't say yes, even though she touched and she played and she had a great time, but now she's embarrassed because her boyfriend found out. And this is just for situations where there's questions. Some guys have this happen to them and the girl wasn't in their room. She didn't have sex with him, he didn't have sex with her, but she had some other reason. I don't remember who I had sex with. Well, it must have been that guy. He was at the same party I was at. Or I don't want to explain why I didn't get a good grade on that test. Oh, I was raped. And this does happen because it can. And it's a power that exists. Power corrupts. It finds the people who will tell lies, and they do. And it's not everyone. And it doesn't have to be everyone. It only has to be one. Yeah, we don't talk tough to girls about alcohol or about making smart decisions with respect to pregnancy or about, we talk about vetting potential partners. We talk about you better shop around before you get married. But we don't talk about don't get mugged. Don't walk down the street, looking vulnerable because somebody will steal your wallet. Guys are taught that they have to be tough. Guys are taught that they have to be strong. Guys are taught that they have to be smart and make smart decisions because nobody else is going to protect them. Girls are taught to rely on guys to protect them. And it's a guy's fault if something happened to them. And they get hurt because they're not watching out for themselves. And it doesn't excuse the person that hurt them, but it still is better to not get hurt because you did protect yourself. than it is to be vulnerable to that asshole who doesn't care about consent. I learned first about the father's rights movement. And the reason that I learned about the father's rights movement was my family situation. I married a divorced man, and he had a custody situation, and there was animosity there. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing because that's water under a bridge that's way back there now. But I started looking into, is there anything for dads? Is there anything in line for father's rights? And almost entirely what I found was gay men banding together to fight against straight ex-wives who were mad at finding out their husband was a closeted gay man and using his sexuality to keep him from fathering his children and taking care of his children. He couldn't be there because he was gay, and he might infect them with gay, and everything happened. And it was working. And these guys, their advice on how to survive the system was very dismal. No, you aren't going to win. No, you aren't. You can't get custody of your kids just because your ex-wife is interfering with your custody. No, you can't go in and talk about what a bad thing it is to separate children from a loving father. And that's where I started. And I got advice, and we acted on the advice that I found, and we got the best outcome we could have, which was still pretty bad. But it wasn't, you can't see the kids anymore ever again. It was, you're going to have a really rough time for about 15 years because of this system and the ease with which it can be exploited. And that's where I got started. And I got to have a front row seat for exactly how screwed up changing our legislative system from the original Family Violence Services and Protection Act of 1984, which established shelters and established that domestic violence is still violence and something still has to be done about it. And it established a system for protecting domestic violence victims and helping domestic violence perpetrators find better ways of dealing with conflict. That was the Family Violence Systems and Services and Protection Act of 1984. In 1994, we changed everything to only protecting women, to we can't deal with it if they lie. We can't accuse them of lying, even if it's obvious. And all perpetrators are men, and all men are perpetrators. Because we do have to have domestic violence legislation. It does not need to be gender specific. So we don't need to eliminate the Violence Against Women Act. We need to degender. We need to have a Violence Against People Act. We can agree really easily, I think, on the fact that cutting an underage person's genitals without their consent is a violation of their bodily autonomy. We can agree that it is wrong to force someone against their will to experience sex with you. And it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It doesn't matter whether the perpetrator is male or female. We can agree that calling women weak is wrong as a generalization, even when it means they're going to get out of responsibility for something because they said they were weak. About things that feminists and MRAs can agree on. I've been through both sexual assault and false accusation. And I wasn't falsely accused of sexual assault or domestic violence, but it was still an extremely traumatic experience. And this is something that I think, feminists don't want to be falsely accused of things. Feminists don't want women to be falsely accused. They don't like the label slut. They consider that a false accusation. They don't want women to be falsely accused of gold digging if they happen to fall in love with a guy who has means. And they don't want women to be falsely accused of being predatory when they're not. And the fact is, the vast majority of people, men and women alike, boys and girls alike, just want to live their lives, go to their jobs, get paid for the work that they do, support their families, raise their children, enjoy their friendships. They don't want to do bad things to each other. They want to hurt each other.